Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us this morning for our webinar, Trauma-Informed Policymaking, Leading Change in Illinois. My name is Lara Altman, and I'm the director of the Illinois ACEs Response Collaborative. I also have here in the office with me Madison Hammett, who's our policy analyst, who will be helping us with the Q&A today. We're so excited about the interest in this webinar and to have our presenters join us. So we're going to go ahead and jump right in. And apologies for getting started a few minutes late. So as I mentioned, we're from Health and Medicine Policy Research Group. We are a small but mighty nonprofit based in Chicago, and we work to improve the health of all people in Illinois by promoting health equity. So today, our agenda for the day is I'm going to start with an overview of our new Trauma-Informed Policymaking Tool, which we just released in May. And then we're going to hear from two groups of people about some trauma-informed policy making actually in action. This work has predated our tool itself, but we feel like they're just both really exciting examples of what trauma-informed policymaking can really look like, and really seeing the principles of trauma-informed policymaking embodied in practice. So we have Colette Payne from Cabrini Green Legal Aid, and then from Voices of Youth in Chicago Education, we have Maria DeGio and Eve Stiles. We will have time for Q&A at the end, so please feel free to type your questions into the question box. That's part of GoToWebinar, and we will keep track of those. And Madison will lead us through a Q&A at the end, as I mentioned. And after the webinar, you'll receive an email, and it'll have a short eval, survey, ways to participate in the collaborative, and you'll also get a recording of the webinar and the slides. People often ask about that. Great, so I'll go ahead and get started. Like I said, I'm Lara. I'm the director of the Illinois ACEs Response Collaborative. We've been around since 2011 and have grown pretty organically over that time. Our mission is to catalyze the movement to prevent trauma across the lifespan, promote thriving, and put the issue of trauma on the forefront of the equity agenda in Illinois. And our vision is really a resilient and equitable Illinois in which individuals, families, communities, and systems have access to the resources that they need to prevent trauma, heal, and thrive. And so our approach is really three-pronged. We do policy and advocacy, capacity building, and then research translation and dissemination. So I'd like to provide a little bit of context first about why we took this on in the first place. As many of you on this call, I'm sure, know, there's been really an increased attention paid towards the use of the trauma-informed approach in both organizational transformation contexts as well as within service delivery, which is very exciting. But we also know that policies themselves have caused and continue to cause significant trauma to individuals, families, and communities, and they also have the potential to really promote healing and thriving on a large scale. And we felt like there weren't as many tools or resources of really understanding how to apply the trauma-informed principles in the policy context. We also here in Illinois have a context that's promoted or kind of facilitated this work, in part because our current Lieutenant Governor, Juliana Stratton, previously was a representative and had been interested in trauma-informed policymaking. So we co-hosted a legislative breakfast with her over a year ago on the topic, and so we felt like now is a good time, now that she is the Lieutenant Governor. We also, Illinois had our first ever Trauma-Informed Awareness Day on May 15th. So really we're seeing this kind of shift or change within the policy realm. And as far as the collaborative, we felt like we're uniquely positioned to lead this effort because we straddle both capacity building and the policy and advocacy world. So we felt like we had really good examples from the capacity building where we work with hospitals, health departments, and other organizations doing this. So we engaged 4 members of the collaborative to help us develop the Trauma-Informed Policymaking Tool. Rebecca Levin from Strengthening Chicago's Youth, Anita Weinberg from the Child Law Policy Institute at Loyola University School of Law, Elena Quintana from the Institute on Public Safety and Social Justice at Adler, and Misty Brown, who's also from there. So we did a little bit of searching first to get a sense of what was out there, and we found this article that really helped us kind of think about how we wanted to move forward, called Trauma-Informed Social Policy, a conceptual framework. And this was really helpful. They looked at some of the principles of being trauma-informed. They didn't use SAMHSA's principles exactly, but based on that and some other things, and gave some examples of what this could look like. And it was really helpful for us. And we also felt like we could do something that was a little bit more action-oriented. This was obviously a peer-reviewed article, and really, as it says, a conceptual framework. We started first with what would the objectives of trauma-informed policymaking really be, and we looked at SAMHSA's 4 objectives, and then we adapted them a little bit to be more fitting for the policy context. So we feel like the trauma-informed policymaking really should integrate the science of early adversity into policy, including recognizing the widespread impact of trauma and its disproportionate impact on marginalized groups specifically. This kind of policymaking should also prevent trauma by identifying and eliminating its sources, avoid re-traumatizing people, and also it really needs to address historical trauma and promote resilience and healing to help individuals, families, and communities thrive. And for those of you who are very familiar with SAMHSA's 4 R's, you can see that this kind of mirrors the 4 R's but adapts them. Okay. Oops. Sorry. Computer is just stuck. So we looked at the 6 principles of the trauma-informed approach from SAMHSA, and so we felt like 4 of the 6 we used the same kind of names and titles. So we felt like the 6 principles of trauma-informed policymaking are safety, trustworthiness and transparency, peer support, collaboration and mutuality, a strengths-based approach, and social justice. So I'll walk through. For each of these principles in our tool, we talk about how to apply the principle both for the process of policymaking as well as the outcome. And we provided prompts for people to ask themselves while they're using this tool. So in terms of safety, it really is ensuring the physical and emotional safety of vulnerable populations. So for the process of policymaking, it's that all stakeholders feel safe participating in the policymaking process. And the outcome, so the resulting kind of legislation or program, is that physical and emotional safety of vulnerable populations is prioritized. And the important question to ask here is whose safety is being prioritized and how are we really prioritizing the safety of vulnerable populations. For trustworthiness and transparency, it's that we should be making decisions with transparency with the goal of building and maintaining trust. So that really means in the process that there's transparency about who is involved, how decisions are made, and the intended goals of the policy, and that the resulting policies and programs and benefits are really clearly defined, including the breadth of services offered, eligibility criteria for participation, and the timelines as well, and that there are accountability measures in place for agencies, providers, and contractors. And the question to ask here is what information about the policy is available, and how is it made accessible to the community? Peer support is also very important because we believe that individuals with shared experiences are collectively working to advance policy for trauma-informed policymaking, and that working towards policy change together is a healing process and healing experience. So that is, for the process of promoting sharing of lived experiences among peers and the development of healing relationships. And for the outcome, it's that sustained relationships are prioritized, particularly among individuals with shared experiences of trauma. And so the important question to ask is which relationships are being prioritized. And then trauma-informed policymaking also focuses on collaboration and mutuality. So we should be leveling power differences for shared decision-making. So this means that individuals who will be impacted by policy outcomes have an equal voice in the policymaking process, and that lived experiences and firsthand knowledge are prioritized as much as or more than outside professional experience. And really, when you're looking at what the outcome of this is, it's that policies work to dismantle the root causes of power differences and reflect the needs of the community. So we need to look at what measures are in place to ensure that every group impacted by the policy has equal representation in decision making. And the last 2 then are using a strengths-based approach, and this is where we did stray a little bit from what SAMHSA talks about. They talk about empowerment and choice, but we felt like those, within this policy framework, those empowerment and choice were really kind of built into the other areas. So we talked about a strengths-based approach, which is to recognize, build on, and validate individual and community strengths and integrate a belief in resilience and the ability to heal from trauma. So within the process, that individuals and communities are empowered to build on their strengths, to identify the strategies that will help them heal from trauma and become more resilient. And the outcome is that a policy would recognize the strengths and are therefore more effective at promoting healing. And so it's really about how are we building on community strengths through this process. And I think we'll hear a lot about that today in the other presentations. And lastly, social justice. This is acknowledging the ongoing impact of historical trauma for individuals and communities and challenging the systemic and institutional oppression that continues to create trauma. So we really recommend using a root cause approach to understand the origin of issues, challenges, and outcomes. And then our policy should really narrow disparities in the experiences and impact of trauma and promote equity. So when you're using this kind of principle, you think about how does this policy address the root causes of issues and which populations will benefit from this policy. So I know that's a lot of information, but you may have already seen the tool, but if not, you'll get it in the follow-up email. And so in terms of our next steps, right now, like I said, we released this on Trauma-Informed Awareness Day in May, so it's still very new. And we're really focused on dissemination to help influence legislators, advocates, communities to think about these principles and how they can make their policymaking more trauma-informed. We're also thinking about how do we evaluate this and think about its impact. But we also recognize that this might need modification. So if you have feedback about the tool itself, please do let us know, and we are going to work on modifying it after it's been used. I will add that our tool is 2 pages. It's a front and a back. And while I didn't go into the definition of trauma here in this webinar, just due to time, the front of our tool does have information about trauma, historical trauma, so that for someone who's never even talked about trauma or the trauma-informed approach, there's some information there, and then the backside are the principles of being trauma-informed. So that is it for me. I'm actually going to turn it over next to our folks from Voice. So Maria, I'll do the introduction.
I am on the line. This is Colette.
Oh, Colette. Oh, great. Fabulous.
Yes, I'm on the line. I cannot, so bear with me, everyone who's on the line via the webinar. I can't see my slides. I was having technical difficulties. I have everything in front of me that I need. Let me see. I'm trying to join in on my phone as well. Computer that didn't work.
Okay, well, Colette, I will do a brief intro of you, and then I will turn it over to you. And I have your slides up here, so I'll just advance them as you're talking. So I'm so glad. Yeah, so we are very excited to have Colette Payne join us today. She is an organizer, leader, student, mother, and grandmother, and her passion is to educate families to build healthier communities. And since 2014, Colette has acted as the head of the Visible Voices program for CLAIM, which is Chicago Legal Advocacy for Incarcerated Mothers program, and now serves as the policy associate for Cabrini Green Legal Aid. In her role, she helps engage those directly impacted by the criminal justice system to become agents of change and creators of solutions. In 2015, Colette joined the delegation to assess women's prisons in Illinois, becoming the first formerly incarcerated woman to serve in this role in the entire U.S. And Colette has appeared on television and spoken at conferences, churches, and universities, as well as testified before legislative committees. Colette was selected as a 2016 Fellow for Just Leadership USA, and Colette is living proof that change really is possible. So we are so excited to have Colette here. She has had some technical difficulties today, but thank you we'll work through it with you, Colette. So I'll turn it over to you now, and you can just let me know when. Yep, go ahead.
Okay, thank you for that lovely introduction. Again, my name is Colette Payne, and our work, working here at CGLA and doing policy reform work, the way we do it, it embodies all of these 6 principles of the Trauma-Informed Policymaking Tool. So I'm glad that we've joined forward. So people come to CGLA for a various number of reasons, and they may either have problems with housing, with getting a job because of a past record, or they may just want to join forces with us because they heard of all the work that we have done. So many of us, and I came to CGLA in this way and did not know that I would soon be working here. I was facing many barriers to employment. I couldn't even obtain a job. And the connection with my children could have been lost. However, it wasn't due to my incarceration. Good thing that I had family members to support me. But a lot of folks don't have that opportunity and that privilege to have family members, especially women, when facing incarceration, to have their family members help them. They either lose their children to the system, the state. They might lose them to other family members, and they want. Next slide, please. Hello? Yeah. Okay. So here at CGLA, we get referrals from either our social workers. I get referrals from either our social workers or either our legal attorneys and people who may be a good fit with helping us with policy, or who are just looking to change systems, those systems of control. So here at CGLA, we will continue to fight for justice. Every person that walks through our door, we will not let their experience be in vain. I know mine was in vain. When I first was looking to get my record sealed, I wanted to know how can I do more, right? So our policy and advocacy work focuses on bringing about systemic justice, driven by leaders of those directly impacted. It is important that when anyone is creating policy, that the voices of those with lived experiences are included. Like, it's like nothing for us without us. People who once felt powerless become agents of change. And once you see an injustice, you are motivated to change that system. I know at least I was motivated to change the multiple systems within. Next slide, please. So with being a Just Leadership USA Fellow, the founder, Glenn E. Martin, who was a formerly incarcerated person himself, he always told us, those closest to the problem are closest to the solution, but furthest away from resources and power. I'm starting to see a shift in that. Like, our voices are starting to become included, right? We have to position ourselves and make sure we have a seat at the table. And sometimes when we're not welcome, just pull up that seat at the table. Again, it's like nothing for us without us. Creating that collaboration of mutual support. Next slide, please. So our approach is popular education and awareness. So what we do is we are leaders, part of the Leadership Council of Visible Voices, and I tell you about what those two tables are later on during the presentation. We do presentations in the community in regards to knowing your rights when you have a felony conviction or a simple arrest. Mythbusters, I cannot live in public housing, things of that sort. And the priorities are set by community needs. And when I say community needs, I mean those most impacted by whatever it is. We want to hear their voice. We want to grab their ideas. We want to see how we can collaborate together and change systems, create better policy changes. And leadership development. Our leaders are developed in a way to share their stories, their experiences, their hopes, their dreams, what they aspire to see be changed. And our people are directly impacted people, again, former clients, community members, and allies in the reform movement. We have several activities, community education workshops, panels, presentations with storytelling, but most importantly, legislative and administrative advocacy. So with administrative advocacy, it's partnering with IDOC to make sure that those who have to serve time are taken care of in a trauma-informed way. Training and development for our leaders, coalition and network building, and implementation efforts. Implementation is so important when you have had any piece of legislation, making sure that things are being taken care of the way that folks have committed to taking care of things, and that's those stakeholders. So our impact is knowledge of the law and relief available for people empowered to take action, increase awareness of issues among stakeholders, improve discourse, removal of statutory barriers, expansion of relief, improved policies. We strengthen leadership skills and the capacity to take action, connections to solutions, and healing. Healing is very much a part of this process. And a lot of times, creating policy and then being involved in this work, when you have been impacted yourself, it is important that you take time to heal. I cannot reiterate that enough. It's important that we take time to creating a stronger movement in a sense of connection and coordinated effort, and ensures legislative and administrative victories are realized by society in the way that we are doing now. Next slide, please. So, how we engage folks? We engage folks in two ways, well, three ways, but I only have two of them here. So our leadership council, this table was formed in 2014 when I started working at Cabrini Green Legal Aid, and we are like an advisory council, if you will. We are impacted community members, and some of those are former clients. We serve as the ambassadors of CGLA, and we lead the educational efforts. Invisible Voices is a group. When I came home recently in 2012, I got involved with the Visible Voices group. Before I started working with CGLA, I was a former resident of Grape House, which is a halfway house on the west side of Chicago for women returning home from incarceration, or if you've been in some type of treatment, right? They house 18 women, and I now facilitate the Visible Voices group there, which is a peer-led empowerment group for those impacted by incarceration. So I lead awareness-raising events and build support for systems change. And support is very much needed when we're discussing, what it is that we've been through. This is how we get to some of the issues, how we connect with a lot of the work that we are working on today by sitting at these key tables. Next slide. So when leadership counts on the activities that we provide, community and education workshops, again, the Know Your Rights presentation, panels and speaking engagement. We have partnered with Adler Psychology, where we do a social exclusion simulation. If you haven't participated in it, I suggest you do so. It is just, what it does is it creates an environment for those who don't know what we go through as impacted women, having been to prison or just having a simple arrest, how we are excluded from the overall society with not being able to get housing, jobs, and the multiple systems that we have to fight against to just survive. Our survival shouldn't be that hard. And, I would say having a lot of, restrictions for my survival shouldn't be, I don't know what the word is I'm trying to, it shouldn't be, like restricted. Say if I'm going to give you an example. If I wanted to get into a certain type of halfway house and they told me, which we know smoking isn't good for you, I have to stop smoking altogether. You can't even smoke outside. That is a restriction. That may be how a person survives. And we do storytelling and we connect with the arts by telling our stories through art. We have collaborated with 96 Acres, the Goodman Theater, and telling our stories through art, what it looks like to be system involved. And legislative advocacy in Springfield. Next slide, please. 2, and we can't do this alone. So there is another table, and this table, working with this coalition, and the name of our coalition is the Rocky Coalition, Restoring Rights and Opportunity Coalition of Illinois. And the table consists of 4 organizations: Community Renewal Society, Chicago Coalition for the Homeless, Youthled Alliance, and CGLA. So it's made up of leaders, policy advocates, and organizers. So what that looks like is you have policy advocates who, some of them are lawyers and the leaders of the impacted folks who want to get involved, who want to make positive policy changes, and the organizers, those who work at these 4 organizations and who get paid for doing the work that we are doing. So we've built a sense of safety, knowing that we all can trust one another, that decisions aren't being made down in Springfield without all of us having the knowledge of these changes, negotiations being made. Everybody is in the room and at the table, and we support each other. We're all here. The policy associates are just like us. We let leaders take the lead. It's a sense of collaboration and mutuality, and we come from a strength-based approach, right, in order to make these social justice changes. So that's our table, and working in this coalition, we have got 6 bills passed outside of the bills that I'm going to talk about today. Next slide. So when we formed the Rocky Table, we realized that people with records are the experts of their own experience. It's like no one can tell our stories better than we can. We create our own narrative. We don't need folks talking for us. We are the ones who can shift the narrative. And it is important that we use our voices in doing so. Next slide, please. So how do we do? The issue focus comes from the community. So out of these 6 bills that were passed, we surveyed the community. We surveyed downstate communities to see what were some of the issues and the barriers that folks were facing, right? We train leaders to be at the decision-making stage. Decision-making is at a coalition table or a steering committee. So we have 2 separate tables. We have steering committee. Is one part if everybody is not in Springfield and it needs to be something to happen on the fly or an emergency, we have to make a decision real quick, the tape goes out. Every text, email, whatever way, we jump on a call to make sure everybody is included. And we take weekly trips to Springfield during legislative sessions. Sometimes our leaders are down there spending the night. It's a collaborative effort. They're spending the night and ready to take off the next morning and hit the ground running to talk to our elected officials. And lobbying is done by leaders, not the lobbyists. They are always included and their voices are heard. And that's a great, part of policy changes. People can tell our stories all day long, but it's more impactful when you put a face with an issue. So, this was exciting. What we did in 2015 and 2016. So in 2015, I was a part of a GIPA practice assessment, gender-informed practice assessment. That's what GIPA stands for. And I was invited to the table by the Women's Justice Initiative, and the founders are Deanne Benos and Alyssa Benedict. Right, so they asked me to be a part of this great assessment, being the first formerly incarcerated woman to serve in this role by going in Logan Correctional and affecting the prison. Right, so we spent 4 days there, going in, taking different shifts, interviewing staff, a part of every department. Each one of us had domains. Those involved were correctional officers, formerly incarcerated person, that was me. You had community folks involved, and out of this assessment a year later came a piece of legislation, right, where the findings were put into action. So we end up passing HB 3904, which is the Women's Correctional Service Act. And what this bill did, it created a permanent women's division in the women's prison, right? Logan, Indicator, and ensuring that women are treated in response to gender. Because, a lot of times I hear, but what about the men? And I say, what about the women? When you look at the different pathways, our pathways versus men's pathways, they're much different. We come from a different place. We have suffered a lot of trauma, being abused, sexual assault, losing your children, all of that trauma. Some of the traumas that men don't have to face. Of course, we're not forgetting about the men, but right now we're focusing on. So we had that bill, and which Juliana Stratton spearheaded. She was then state representative, now lieutenant governor, and she still supports our efforts today.
Colette, I just wanted to give you a couple minute warning. I'm sorry to rush you, but we do have a couple more minutes for your part.
Oh, wow. Okay. 2018. So then we started the task force, right? 100 women working group. We're looking to cut the prison population of women in half, right? And we're still working on that. A report will be coming out, and hopefully legislation after next time. So the two pieces of legislation that we just passed and we are working on, HB 2444, which Representative Kelly was the chief sponsor on this bill. And what we're looking to do is, avoid the trauma. We're trying to keep families together. So this would benefit and We're looking forward to get community-based sentencing, right? Instead of people going to prison and separating families. So this is all connected with the ACEs, specific trauma events that occurred during childhood, the poor mental and physical health outcomes, including serious chronic diseases that can result in premature death. It is important that those bonds not be broken. So if a parent, what you can do is present those mitigating factors during sentencing, if that happens, to say that you're taking care of a child or even taking care of a loved one. And this is for both men or women, anyone who is a caregiver of anyone in their family. Next slide, please. So the next bill is HB 2649, and you can go to the next slide when you get a chance. So next slide after that, I talked about 2649, and this was task force for children of the incarcerated, which was initially Bill of Rights for children of the incarcerated. But the task force is, it's okay. Hopefully we can resolve some things. And this bill was created and modeled after California. They created a Senate resolution adopting a similar Bill of Rights for the children of incarcerated parents in 2010. And in 2017, Oregon became the first state to pass the Bill of Rights for children of incarcerated parents into law. HB 2049 would make Illinois only the second state in the nation to pass the Bill of Rights for children of incarcerated parents. However, it is now the task force of children of the incarcerated. And what we're looking to do is come to some type of agreement, have all folks involved in sitting at the table, some stakeholders, impacted folks, so we can make sure and ensure that there are no additional harm at the time of parental arrest or sentencing, that children are to be informed of the arrest and any sentence in an age-appropriate manner, to be heard and respected by decision makers when decisions are made about the child, or to be considered when decisions are made about the child's parents. So all of that is included in my slides, and you can look more into it for the sake of time. But I am looking forward to working with State Representative Delia Ramirez, who championed this bill, along with the other different stakeholders, to come to some type of agreement as to how children should be treated during the time of arrest. And again, all of this ties into the Trauma-Informed Policymaking Toolkit. Safety, trustworthiness, and transparency, peer support, strength-based approach, and again, social justice change. Thank you. Oh, a few pictures. Yep. It's changing laws and systems, but we're also changing hearts and minds. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Colette. I think you provided so much information that just demonstrates how to embody these principles in your process, as well as in the legislation that you all are working on. So I really appreciate it. I'm going to turn it over now to two folks from Voices of Youth in Chicago Education. We have Maria DeGio, who was born and raised in the island of the Philippines, migrated to the U.S. with her family in 2000. Maria has been involved in Voice since its inception in 2007, first starting as a youth leader in Communities United, the convener of Voice, and is now the coordinator for the statewide Youthled Alliance. And with Maria is Eve Stiles. Eve is a proud, undocumented trans woman of color fighting to end the school-to-prison pipeline through her work with Voice. Eve has been an active member with Voice since 2013 and is currently a Voice alum, helping to guide the new generation of young people of Voice. So I'm going to go ahead and, Maria, I will give you control. So 1 second. Sharing. Maria, you can go ahead and Eve, you can go ahead and start talking whenever you're ready.
Okay, great. Can everybody see our screen?
No, not yet. Looks like yes. There we go.
See it.
You're all
You can
set.
see it now? Okay, great. Thank you so much, Colette, for that really informative presentation, and really shows the connection between the Trauma-Informed Policymaking Tool and the work that you do. So it's getting us really excited about our presentation too. So do you want to take it away?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Colette. So before we go ahead and get started, we make sure to go ahead and follow us on our social media platforms. We are on Facebook and Twitter. Go ahead and use the hashtag Rethinking Safety with any of your posts. Of course, everything that's on Twitter is true, right? So my name is Eve Stiles. My gender identity pronouns are she, her, hers. I am a Voice alum, and I've been working with Voice since 2015 after the SB 100 victory.
And my name is Maria DiHilio. I'm the weird one that looks like I just woke up. I was on a tent that day, and the coordinator for Voice. I started when Voice started back in 2007. I was part of the original group that actually launched Voice, so I've been here for about 13 years, and my gender identity pronouns are she, her, hers.
So what is Voices of Youth in Chicago's Education? Voice is Youthled Alliance. It is made of young people of color working to end the school-to-prison pipeline through statewide legislation. Voice uses trauma-informed leadership development and participatory action research and community organizing.
And so when we talk about why Voice started in the first place, like why we started working on statewide legislation, so back in 2012, a group of 10 young people really came together to design what they wanted their schools to look like in Illinois. And then really what they ended up with is 3 things that they wanted to do. The first thing they wanted to do was to have data transparency, because no one ever believed them when it comes to what's happening in their school. The second thing is that they wanted to end zero tolerance, because they should not be getting suspended or expelled for small things, and really they want to end school-based arrest. And the belief that, schools should not be a pipeline to prison.
A few of our accomplishments are we passed SB 2793 for data transparency in 2013. We also passed SB 100, which is the one we're most known for, in 2015. So if you guys can look at the slides, we do have just some nice pictures of some victory moments, and yeah. Great. So the rules of Young People in Voice are what I have displayed, but I do want to point some out. Number 3 are organized youth meetings to talk about strategy on our campaign. Number 5, educate policymakers and the general public on the campaign and solutions. And last, number 8, spread the knowledge, teach others the skills we need to achieve our goals. We also branch out and teach other people outside of the organization on youth engagement, leadership, and power building. So of course, Voice is led by the youth, and what we ultimately want is for the youth to take control and take leadership.
In terms of the roles of adult allies in Voice, really it's a very small amount of things, but it's really significant, right? Part of youth engagement is making sure that adults know when to step back, and part of that is giving feedback on a campaign strategy, or just helping provide the logistics on space and food and transportation, help with the fundraiser or the research, and help them when they talk to policymakers and just the general public.
And here is a beautiful picture of a great site, and this just basically reminds me of a reflection within myself, and then also how close we are with summer ending. But reflecting on my experience as a Voice leader and principles of trauma-informed policymaking, because the two really mirror each other, As an undocumented transgender woman of color, I grew up very confused, being that I not only had one struggle, but I had mainly three, and I was very confused because I didn't know if being driven to want to have a voice and speak up was a good thing or a bad thing, because as being undocumented, I was taught that if you were to speak up against the government, you'd get in trouble and you'd get deported. Also, being transgender, I was told to tone it down because if someone didn't like the way I spoke, the way I looked, the way I acted, I was going to get beat up or a hate crime was going to be done against me. So I wasn't sure if being driven to have my voice was a good thing or a bad thing. And then I started working with Voices of Youth, and that's when I felt that safety. I did not have that safe space at home, nor did I have it at my school. So I made Voice, the group, my safe space. They really gave me the trustworthiness and the transparency. What I got was exactly how it was. And I didn't have to worry about being outed. I didn't have to worry about uncomfortable questions. I didn't have to worry about any of the struggles that a transgender woman usually goes through a transition. So, and then of course, there was plenty of peer support. There was so much love, and ultimately, I believe it was Lara that had said it. She made a point saying relationships are prioritized on shared experiences of trauma, and I 100% agree with that because I prioritized my relationship here with the people of Voice because they related to my trauma and they related to what I went through, and it really became more of an aspect of I want to make sure that everybody was okay because they made sure that I was okay. And ultimately, Voice just helped me grow and help me become the woman that I wanted to be through collaboration. And they really fed that fire of the social justice that I always wanted in my life.
Yeah, and so I think, thank you for that, Steve. And I think, for us as an organization or as a Youthled Alliance, a lot of people don't really understand what it means to be youth-led. They think that talking to young people means youth-led, when youth-led really means that young people are at the epicenter of every decision-making that you need to do, right? And that includes, choosing the campaign and driving the campaign to where they want it to go. But really, Voice believes in three principles, and those are that the people affected by the issue the most should be a part of the solution. We definitely believe that this work is healing, just like what Eve eloquently demonstrated in her story. And the last thing is that using this approach will allow for great personal transformation and even greater policies, since they're informed by the people who are affected by it the most. And so it kind of leads us to where we are now.
And it leads us to the question of why the Rethinking Safety campaign. So we made it because we need to challenge what it means to be safe in our schools. After the Parkland shooting, a lot of legislation began to harden our schools by giving guns to teachers. And obviously, being a transgender woman in a school, I have to deal with issues where if I went into the girls' bathroom, I got in trouble. And, in that kind of scenario, that made me worried because if I know that there's a teacher that is armed, it makes me feel very uncomfortable as to how they will react in a negative response. Or it just makes, I feel like my safety wouldn't feel that good.
Mm-hmm. And the Rethinking Safety campaign is really centered around three demands, and these came from a conversation of the young people that we've already been involving, and this is where they want to see things go when it comes to safety. They wanted to create a grants program for school districts to create or expand their mental and behavioral health programs, and that was Senate Bill 1941. That bill slid out with flying colors from both the House and the Senate. We are planning to get the governor to sign it publicly before August ends. The second piece is really about creating data transparency in school-based arrests, and we're planning to call that during veto session. And
building school-based health clinics across the state of Illinois. And I think we had added questions and answers at the end, but I think Lara or Madison, I don't know if you all want to kind of take over from here.
Yep, we thank you so much for that overview of voice and talking about your work. We are just, there you go. I'm going to hand it over to Madison now, who's going to lead us in, leave some time for Q&A. If you haven't done so already, please do feel free to type your questions into the question box, and Madison will kind of take a look at all those and ask us the questions. So Madison,
yeah. Thank you so much to Colette and Maria, and I am gonna, oh wow, we've got a bunch coming in, so I'm consolidating them for us, but I'm gonna start off with one that we got. Both of y'all's programs really utilize the voices of people who are affected by this legislation. They're using stories, but a lot of policymakers and other folks are really interested in evidence-based material and sometimes have difficulty reconciling the two. So how do you get around that? And that's for both of you, so we can start with, how about Maria? Did we lose you? Oh no.
Maria, are you there? Colette, maybe you want to take a, I don't know if we lost Maria, but Colette, are you there?
Yes, I am here. So with evidence-based materials, when it came to creating the two bills, HB 2649 and 2444, we used the ACEs. We use the ACEs as our evidence base, and that is what San Francisco Children that was Incarcerated, what they use as their evidence base. And I mean, we all know, and I understand that that data is important, but from first-hand experience, it's many of us who know this to be true without the data because we have experiences. So we use the ACEs. Can someone mute themselves, or is that me talking to the echo?
I think either, yeah, Maria or Colette need to mute your computer maybe.
Yeah, so, you know, just with the family impact statement, you know, that framework, you know, we did use we did use evidence-based when it came to creating these two pieces of legislation. Does that answer?
Hi, can everybody?
Yeah, thank you, Colette. And Maria and Eve?
Yeah, sorry about that. My computer froze for a second. So for us, I mean, we definitely echo what Colette said. We have to be able to tell our story because our story is evidence. And I think I've heard you say this a million times, which is that we are the proof that things are happening in our schools. But, you know, there's also a big gap, right? Like the reason why we're asking for data is because data is really hard to get. And that's why that was the first thing on the wish list of the young people back in 2012, because nobody would believe them that these things happen. We even have young people that talk to legislators, and legislators are either saying, you know, this is a Chicago issue when it comes to suspensions or expulsions, or like, you know, that doesn't happen in my district. So data definitely helps when it comes to these conversations, but this is why it's even more important to include the people that are really affected by this issue, to be at the center of it, so that they can actually talk about their own experience, and that within itself is evidence. Do you want to add anything? No, I think it's pretty good. Yeah.
Thank you. So I'm actually going to combine a couple of questions here, so and ask about next steps if we can start with Maria and Eve. So folks are asking, what are the next steps for both the Rethinking Safety team, but also just voices in general? Someone asked about more social workers in schools. Someone asked about expanding to the suburbs. So where do you see y'all's work headed in the near future and beyond?
Okay, I think I can answer that. So for our next steps, we are planning a youth summit, and this will be at the end of August. So in this youth summit, we will talk about what it means to be safe in schools for young people. We will also have trainings to what it means to end the school to prison pipeline and what it means to, I'm sorry, I'm trying to read my notes. To work with young people.
Yeah. And I think like on top of the youth summit, like Eve is talking about, I think we still have negotiations happening for the data transparency bill that we're trying to call in veto session. Also, like we got if the governor signed Senate Bill 1941, we still need to try to get money so that the program can exist. And then we still need to get money so that we can build school-based health clinics. So the work is definitely, there's still a lot of work to do, but we were able to progress sometime, discussion, but definitely there's still more work to do.
Great, thank you. And Colette, we're gonna wrap up with this for you as well. So what are the next steps for Cabrini Green Legal Aid and their legislative work?
So we work on legislation yearly, but in regards to the Task Force for Children of the Incarcerated, we have already started planning meetings to meet with system stakeholders in regards to how children should be treated during arrest of their parents, should they have a say-so in the matter. We're going to have impacted folks at the table. I'm one of those impacted persons. And 6 months, we're going to be working to come up with solutions and see how it goes from there, possibly a piece of legislation. But with our coalition members, the three that I talked about, we're constantly continuing to work on removing barriers for those with temporal arrest or who have been to prison. This is an ongoing process for us.
Great, thank you so much. And folks, I see we're still having some questions roll in. Colette, Maria, and Eve have all very generously shared their contact information, which you'll see at the end of this. So if you still have some questions or comments that you would like for them to answer, you'll be able to reach out to them directly. So thank you so much for sticking with us a little bit past the go time. Thank you.
I just want to say,
Thank you.
I hope you can join us. We hope you can join us for our next webinar, which is on September 17th at 3 p.m. We'll have Dr. Kimberly Mann, who's the Deputy Director of Research and Child Wellbeing at the Illinois Department of Children and Family Services, talk about Cook County's early childhood court team. We hope you can join us. For more information, you can see all of our contact info on the screen. Again, we want to say thank you so much to our presenters today. We're so appreciative of the work that you all are doing, and we're excited about it. And if you do have any questions about our Trauma-Informed Policymaking Tool as well, please feel free to reach out. And a big thank you also to Rebecca Levin, Anita Weinberg, Elena Quintana, and Misty Brown for their contributions to our Trauma-Informed Policymaking Tool. So again, thank you so much. We appreciate that you all joined us today, and please do stay in touch. Have a great afternoon.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone.
Good job, you all.
Bye-bye.